Ravi forced his shovel under the curved brick and pried the slab clear. A breath of warm, oil-scented air spilled from the gap and rolled out across the dust. Suspicion tightened the occult historian's jaw while he crouched and watched the small chest of light reveal a coiled serpent relief carved into the low wall around terracotta fertility idol wrapped in cloth stained with fresh oil. Ravi's hands trembled as he lifted the idol. His fingers left dark fingerprints on the cloth. The first 5 minutes at the trench made the central problem clear. Someone, or some living practice, had been using this chamber within memory, and the team had walked into an active ritual site. That suspicion pushed the occult historian to act faster than paperwork. He ordered careful photography, but his voice was clipped and direct, so the command would be followed without argument. Within an hour the site filled with controlled bustle. Dhruta Mehra crouched over a notebook while Ravi and Anil passed labeled bags. The occult historian set the idol on a grey canvas and turned it slowly beneath his lamp. He noticed oil seeping into a threadbare fold at the base and a faint black ash clinging to the cloth. He tapped the clay seal near the idol and traced the stylized, coiling motif with his brass magnifier. The presence of recent oil and ash converted suspicion into a working hypothesis. The relief and idol functioned not as forgotten debris, but as instruments of current social practice. He spoke with firm economy. Dhruta Mehra, preserve context. Photograph the wall, then the idol at 3 angles. Mehra answered, I know. Mehra's fingers worked faster. He kept his eyes on the sealed stair at the edge of the pit where bricks had been moved. The first emotion shift came when curiosity replaced the immediate suspicion. The occult historian set aside the lamp and let the lantern's light pool on rubbings and sketches. He wanted to see the pattern that tied object to space. He instructed Anil to sieve soil from the base of the relief. Anil reported charcoal here and clumps of a dark paste, burnt oil with plant remains. The man sounded worn and a little afraid. Ravi, the historian said, did you move the bricks near the stair? Ravi shook his head. No, sir. It was like that when I cleared the sand. This exchange made the historian silent for a beat. The suspicion reasserted itself. If no one had disturbed the stair recently, who had been entering the vault to lay fresh offerings? He felt a low, practical urgency and moved to catalogue pieces before the sun left them. They built a temporary lab under a canvas tarp at the trench. The occult historian sat beside a table strewn with broken terracotta figurines and the clay seal stamped with the serpent motif. He dictated measurements while writing tight marginal notes on ritual arrangement and potential parallels to other Indus artifacts. Anil held a tray with an ash sample and handed it across. The historian scraped a corner of the sample into a sterile vial and wrote a short label, "This smells of sesame oil and charred herb, Anil." The occult historian closed his eyes for 1 second to concentrate, and then described what he smelled aloud in concrete detail. Burnt sesame with an undernote of crushed neem. He kept the description factual to avoid inference. The team listened. Conflict rose in the trench as the funding and authority around the dig reasserted themselves. Dhruta Mehra pulled the occult historian aside and lowered his voice until it was private. Ravi says villagers have been visiting the site at night. Mehra, if we expose an active sanctum, we lose local support and the board will question our methods. The occult historian answered with a short, measured statement. We document. We do not remove ritual objects without consent. Mehra countered. We cannot leave things that compromise the site. If we refuse to take the items, locals will accuse us of theft. This exchange became a tight negotiation over evidence, ethics, and the project's future. They traded 3 quick overlapping lines. Dear Mehra, we record and seal. If we seal, we risk the villagers' anger. If we remove, we risk losing the site's integrity. The argument ended with Mehra pinching the bridge of his nose and saying, then document everything. Then we decide. The disagreement highlighted that the central conflict was not only archaeological but political. The team moved objects into labeled containers. Anil recorded the ash, and Ravi worked the trowel on a hidden seam near the wall. The occult historian made careful rubbings of the seal and a pencil tracing of the relief. Outside, the village began to gather at the edge of the dig, voices low and urgent. The tension rose again when a woman from the group, Bella the village elder, approached the camp with a battered cord in her hand. She spoke with compressed force. "You have opened what should stay closed. Bella, you have broken an agreement with the coiling spirit. Dure." Mara stepped forward and tried to reason. "Bella, we are archaeologists. We are recording history." Bella cut him off with a hard, tight laugh. "History keeps living here." She replied, "You take our bread away when you take the faith." The occult historian watched Bella's fingers trace the cord. He noted the small knots and their placement. She had retied them many times. Their quarrel exposed local stakes. The occult historian felt a second emotion shift from curiosity into unease. The ritual functions not only as belief but as social control. He left the lab to stand beside the campfire, where the villagers argued. Bella's voice rose in concrete accusations. "You move the stones. Men come and pray at night. You will not decide for us due to Mara. We only want to preserve the site." "Preserve?" Bella spat. "You preserve the dead. We keep what feeds the fields." The occult historian observed Bella's gaze flick to the stepwell's direction beyond the tents. He took one measured step toward her and said, "Bella, if the cords are tied to people, show me. Help me understand what you fear losing." Bella pulled back like a hand flinching from a flame, then raised the cord again and recited a terse injunction that named a household and a plot of land. The villagers murmured. The historian counted names in his head. The exchange made the social mechanics concrete. The cords and the idol linked to who could harvest and who could not. They discovered the sealed stair that night. Ravi cleared shifted bricks and found a hidden threshold. The occult historian was there with his lamp when the first step gave under his boot, and the stair exhaled the same oily scent as the idol. He descended, keeping his shoulders forward and his lamp steady. The inner chamber was low. A bronze coiling, serpent idol sat on a low stone altar, and braided cords lay arranged in a pattern matching the seal's motif. The presence of the cords compelled a third emotion shift. Unease deepened into alarm. The historian's hands tightened around the railing. He felt a cold, practical clarity and called upward, "Photograph now." "Leave the opening wide, do not touch the bronze." He switched to concrete tasks, orders, measurements, and the steady inventory of men and materials. Inside the chamber, the historian moved with a small routine he had learned through years of fieldwork. He inspected the bronze for repair marks, for traces of handling. He found hairline scratches consistent with repeated lifting and rubbing at the serpent's head. He noted the braided cords. Each knot matched a pattern. A few cords had fresh fraying at the ends. He wrote a short entry. "Bronze shows handling within last decade. Cords retied regularly." Anil held the torch and repeated details aloud. They worked in low voices and brief sentences, each line a precise, practical observation. Every 5 minutes the team paused to photograph and to send someone outside to watch for villagers. The occult historian felt pressure to process facts rather than to theorize. He then spent the night alone in his small study tent with the seal and the rubbings. He set up a charcoal rubbing on thin paper and overlaid a diagram of the braided cord pattern. Working alone, he assembled a reconstruction in sketches and a measured model that animated on his table. The reconstructed serpent priest winding around a stepwell and leading a pattern of offerings. The visualization was a methodical exercise, but the historian let his imagination fill in the ritual cadence. A priest moving along the same knots, offerings placed at marked stones, hands lifted and bodies counted. The reconstruction made explicit what the relics had only implied. It explained how the cords directed households to specific plots, and how the cult's ceremonies regulated planting and marriage alliances. The occult historian's mood shifted again. Curiosity became a cold, methodical focus. He wrote a bullet of interpretation. Ritual pattern ties fertility rites to land allocation and social obligation. He repeated the note twice to ensure it lodged in the record. A sharp, external event broke the night's quiet. The villagers outside started a low chant when the team opened the inner chamber. The sound rose and broke like a physical pressure on the canvas. The occult historian's breath tightened. He aniled to close the tent flap and asked Ravi to watch the entrance. Bella arrived at the edge of the lamps with several others, and her voice cracked the canvas. "You do not have the right, Bella." "Not without the names tied to these cords," the historian answered. "We record the names that were spoken here." "We will show you the record." Bella shook her head and stepped toward the opening. "The names are for the village. You will not write them on paper for strangers." The exchange forced the team into a public negotiation over who could claim authority to name households. The occult historian felt the third emotion shift from alarm to a grim resolve to record without igniting violence. When the occult historian lifted the bronze idol carefully to press a rubbing beneath it, a hidden glass vial dislodged and fell from behind the idol. The vial shattered on the flagstone and an acrid scent hit everyone in the mouth. For a second, time compresses into precise actions. A sharp sound, a few coughs, then an instinctive voice from the dark. Someone began to chant in the old cadence. The reconstructed serpent priest flashed across the historian's mind as a vivid, staged sequence. He heard the imagined cadence match the villagers' chant exactly. The chant's rhythm spread outward, and the villagers repeated a named invocation. Bella's eyes went wide, and she clutched the battered cord in both hands. The inner chamber had moved from object to performance in an instant. That moment was the chapter's climax. Academic distance collapsed under immediate communal force. The historian's hands, which had been steady, trembled. His jaw set, he shouted one short command: "Seal the stair." "Photograph the broken vial." The team obeyed. In the immediate fallout, people reacted with concrete, human gestures. Ravi stepped back and said, "Bella, what is that vial?" Bella's voice hit the word like a stone. "It keeps the names." "We keep it for the fields," Jutamera demanded. "Bella, tell us what the names are." Bella stared at him and said, "You took the names when you counted our plots. You will not take them again." The occult historian listened, and then appealed to detail rather than persuasion. "Show me how the cord ties to a household," he said. Bella unrolled the cord and pointed at knots, naming them to specific family heads by pointing at people in the dark. The villagers murmured names that matched the registrar's lists in the team's notes. The historian recorded the alignment in shorthand while trying to keep his voice low. The twist arrived when the historian compared the names Bella spoke with the project's map. Several names matched household allocations the team had assigned on spreadsheet entries last season. The historian realized the cult's ritual had been integrated into municipal control long before this excavation. The cords and names had been a social ledger. The discovery changed their interpretation. The idol and cords were not merely superstition, but an embedded local governance mechanism. This concrete twist reoriented the stakes. It meant removing objects could disrupt food access and legal standing for families. The team had to choose between preservation and social harm. The historian felt responsibility shift the weight from academic to civic. The argument that followed was quick and edged. "We cannot remove these without community consent." Drer. Mara forcing 3 terse lines into the air. Ravi added, "If we remove them, some families will claim theft." Bella insisted, "You record, you seal. You do not name on paper what binds us." The occult historian found himself mediating with specific acts. He suggested a sealed registry written in ink kept under village custody with copies held by the project. He named the practical steps, wrote them down loud, and then paused. The villagers accepted the proposal with guarded nods but insisted on conditions. The team would seal the chamber and hand the ritual cord to the village elders for safekeeping. The decision answered an immediate conflict but left the larger question unsettled. They sealed the chamber at dawn. Men and women worked together to close the stair and shift the bricks back into place. The occult historian supervised the documentation while Drea Matra photographed the final arrangement and noted the chord positions. Anil stored the broken violus fragments in a labeled box. Before the last brick slid home, Bella leaned toward the occult historian and said plainly, "Keep this between us. We will hold the cord. You will keep a copy of the names but do not publish them." The historian hesitated less than a breath and nodded. He wrote the agreement in a short line that would become an obligation. The final paragraphs consist of the team's concrete actions around the campfire after sealing. They packed up the rubbings, placed the bronze in a crate marked for in situ preservation, and stowed the labeled evidence under double wraps. Mera lit a cigarette and exhaled without comment. Ravi cleaned his trowel by scraping it on a stone and then handed it to Anil. Bella stood a little off from the fire, the cord looped over her shoulder. The occult historian composed the day's report and added a single line of interpretation: that the object's ritual logic continued to operate as a mechanism of communal control. He closed his notebook, slid the magnifier chain back under his shirt, and then spoke one final concrete line to the group. "We seal it now and we will keep our promise in writing." Mara looked up and said, "Agreed." Bella retied her cord and turned to walk away. The last image of the chapter is a brick laid into place over the stair with Anil's gloved hand smoothing mortar, sealing the chamber and the immediate conflict while leaving the question of authority active in the village's hands. Emotion roots suspicion. He caught Ravi's shoulder as the cloth muffled the bronze and the idol's cold edge pressed into his palm. Suspicion tightened his jaw. The occult historian did not wait to be polite. A flashlight beam cut across the collapsed arch and caught the coiled silhouette of metal disappearing into a bundle. "Ravi," he said, and his voice held the command that had stopped men on dig sites before. Ravi froze, the cloth sagging. The weight in the bundle shifted, a tiny metallic clink answering the historian's grip. Within 5 steps of the trench, the team could see the mouth of the ruined temple. The historian had spent 2 decades cataloging seals and reliefs in rooms just like this, rooms where a carved animal could determine status, marriageability, or tax obligation. He knew the niche in the archway from the first chapter's excavation notes. The slab Ravi had pried up last summer to reveal the coiling relief beneath the bricks. That earlier pry had been careful, recorded, and entrusted to the camp chest. Now the niche gaped empty in the night, and the missing bronze made the concrete stakes obvious. Someone had taken a ritual object with the intention to use it, not to sell it. He let suspicion guide his hands. He did not shout for Mira. He did not call for the rest of the team. He followed the thin drag marks to the left, where loose sand had been disturbed toward the village. The path smelled of stale oil and human sweat. The flashlight revealed footprints, a sodden smear where something metallic had been rubbed against stone. He moved fast. His coat collar rose against the night air, his spectacles catching the beam. He had learned to move cleanly in places where objects carried social authority, stones, seals, small idols that could change a village's morning. Dawn found the camp assembled on the trench edge. The historian stood with Mira Patel at his side, her palms on her hips, her field notes open and uncompromising. "Where is it?" Mira demanded. "The niche is empty," the historian said. He crouched and pointed at the drag marks. "Look, 2 sets of prints, one smaller. It wasn't eluters from the road. Someone from here walked it out." Mira traced the smear with a gloved finger and frowned. "If they took an idol, they intend a rite." Not Rizal, her voice was flat, professional, but the word "right" tilted the camp's mood. Ravi stepped forward. He kept his eyes down. "I found a bronze this morning," he said. "I meant to bring it to you. I wanted to see if it matched other pieces." His hands were clean. His voice had a practiced steadiness, the steadiness of someone used to being questioned. I didn't mean, Mira cut him off. Ravi, the niche was sealed when we catalogued it. You know that. The chest is locked. Who else knew about the slab? Ravi swallowed. He pointed toward the village, only Sidhu. The old rites still matter. I was going to ask him, Mira's mouth tightened. Sidhu doesn't he dig? He watches. They followed the trail to the ruined stepwell at the village edge, where Sidhu waited with sunburned hands clutching a wooden staff. The elder's face had the hard lines of someone who had spent decades at the rim of water. He glared at the excavation team. You brought strangers to my land. Sidhu, you opened the mound. Now you accuse my people. He kept his voice low and held the historian's gaze like a challenge. The serpent belongs to the line that tends the well. You desecrated that line when you moved the slab, Mira answered. Sidhu, we recorded the slab. We left offerings in place. You were present at the sealing. Sidhu spat into the dust. Sealed for your papers, not for us. The gods do not care for papers. His refusal closed the conversation. He would not hand over answers. In the stepwell's dark mouth, the historian crouched and ran a finger along the rim of a broken terracotta figure. The clay was still damp. He could see the arrangement of shards, a ring laid around a shallow basin, 3 small fertility figurines set in a triangle, and a smear of dark residue on the lip. He recognized the pattern from field notes that described offerings renewed by passage of hands. The residue had the texture of crushed sesame oil and something else, a plant fiber he could not name by sight. They've been here tonight, Mira. Someone renewed the arrangement. She looked at Ravi. Ravi, where were you from midnight to 3 a.m.? Ravi's jaw tightened. I was at the dig. I checked the trench. I slept by the tents. Mira's eyes narrowed. You were with Sidhu last night. You were seen. Ravi held his stare for a beat and then lowered it. The historian closed his eyes for a second and let his fingers trace the broken figurine. He imagined the pattern of hands. Who would set those pieces in place? Who would kneel and lay oil in the basin? Who would risk breaking the site, superficial trust to perform an illicit rite? The reconstructed image that rose was not an accusation toward Ravi alone. It was the outline of communal need. He saw the reconstructed serpent priest in his mind's eye. Shoulder, length braids threaded with beads, ochre lines across the forehead, slow deliberate gestures that mimicked a coiling snake. The image came not as fantasy but as a working model, a way to match gestures to marks. He used it to read the wet smear and the placement of figurines. Back at the camp courtyard, Mira's voice rose for the first time. Ravi, do you understand how serious this is? She kept her sentences short. If someone restarts a rite, we have legal responsibility, Ravi snapped. I didn't steal it. You accused me at dawn because you wanted a culprit. The exchange tightened. Mira, Ravi, you handled the slab. You were the last person recorded near the arch. Why are you evasive now? Ravi, because not all uses of the past are crimes. Mira, Anaya arrived then, her clothing plain, a battered clay pot in her hand. She pushed through a cluster of tensed shoulders and met Mira's eyes. Anaya, Mira, what are you doing here? Anaya's voice did not shake. I came for the idol, she said. I wanted it for my husband. He hasn't carried a child in 2 years. The midwife said I should go to the Serpent. The camp fell silent like a held breath. Ravi took a step back. Anaya, you can just... Mira interrupted. You can take excavation fines. This is illegal. Anaya lifted the pot and put it on the table as if it were evidence. The clay impression on its rim matched the seal from the vault. I pressed this last night, after I took a bit of clay from the stair. I went to Sidhu for blessing. I asked him to help. The line expects offerings. The idol will hear. Mira's face hardened. Anaya, you risk our permit. You risk the site's protection. Anaya, I risked a chance to be a mother. Which risk do you value? The camp's hierarchy snapped. Conversations split into 2 camps, those who argued legal custody and those who listened to Anaya's plea. Sidhu stood with his staff, arms folded, and watched the exchange as if measuring who would break first. The historian watched Mira and Anaya and counted the micro moves. Mira's jaw tightening, Ravi's hand twisting in his pocket, Anaya's straight back. Each action revealed stakes that words had not touched. He kept his hands in his coat and let the facts accumulate. A missing idol, fresh seal impressions, a village elder claiming lineage, a woman who had taken clay and gone seeking fertility. That evening the team divided. Mira wanted to notify the district office. The historian argued for quiet documentation and observation. If we involve officials, they will remove the Welsh guardians and the ritual may spread, he said. Mira barked. You cannot justify theft, he replied. I'm not justifying theft, I'm tracing motive. If a woman stole an idol to ask for a child, we need to know how widespread that need is. The argument sharpened into a rapid exchange. Mira, call the office, said Ravi. Ravi, don't instruct me, Mira snapped. You want to tear the place apart. You don't see the village. Ravi's voice went higher. Ravi, your voice, Mira, is only useful if it's honest. Were you with Sidhu last night? Yes, Ravi, I was. The three-line volley ended with a small, precise unraveling of their positions. At dusk, Sidhu led them to a low house at the edge of the village where Anaya had been taken in by an aunt. The doorway smelled of cooking smoke and crushed greens. Sidhu's posture changed in that house. His face softened for a moment when a small child reached for his staff. He refused to answer direct questions about the idol's fate, but admitted that the line of caretakers still performed rites when harvests failed or births lagged. We do what the well taught us, he said. You bring stones. We bring vows. We are not thieves. We are hungry people making demands. Mira listened, but her notebook betrayed impatience. The historian stayed watchful. In a corner a small clay seal sat on a shelf. Someone had pressed it into damp clay that morning. The historian recognized the motif. A stylized serpent coiled around geometric fertility marks. The seal's impression matched the clay pot Anaya had presented. They returned to the subterranean vault beneath the mound in the afternoon sunlight, while the villagers worked the fields. The historian led the descent. He crouched where the wet smear had been and examined the arrangement of broken fertility figurines. He traced the shallow grooves with a gloved fingertip. A new detail caught his eye. A shallow scrape along the ledge, small parallel lines made by a metal clasp. Whoever had brought the idol to the well had set it down, tied it with a cord, and then tried to pry the necklace or pendant free. He realized the recent ritual had included a binding attempt. Someone had bound the idol to a cord and then failed. The unsuccessful attempt left a trace that argued against a quick theft and suggested an improvised ritualization. Mira folded her arms. So who performs these rites? Professional priests, unsanctioned villagers, the historian said, neither entirely. This looks like grassroots ritual, people with enough knowledge to arrange the offerings, but not enough to reforge a stolen piece. They borrow the language of ceremony without institutional support. He named the pattern aloud, and in doing so he offered a working hypothesis to the team. The reconstructed serpent priest in his mind steadied the claim. Not an elite priest in a temple, but a local ritual exemplar acting as authority when priests were absent. Late that night the camp heard the first call from the stepwell. A hollow wooden drum hit twice in quick succession, then once more. Wordless, the historian left his tent with the shard they had found earlier pinned in a small jar to dry. He moved through tents that smelled of tobacco and damp paper and walked to the stepwell rim, where a crowd had gathered. Anaya stood with hair loose, a braid taken down by nervous fingers, and Sidhu beside her. Ravi stood back, his shoulders tight. Mira arrived with a cluster of field assistants. The historian kept to the rim and watched the bronze pass among hands. The crowd's movement was not chaotic. It had the precision of many people who had practiced this sequence before. Hands moved the idol from pair to pair. A whisper ran through the circle like a practiced litany. Anaya stepped forward and placed a palm on the serpent's coil. I ask, she said in a voice that carried, for a child. The historian felt the word land as a turning point. He stepped between Mira and the crowd. "Stop this," he said. He moved his hands in a way that asked for calm rather than force. "This will make us all liable. If you complete this rite, the district will move in," Sidhu answered in a low tone. "And if you stop it, who will give my people a chance?" The bronze changed hands. Ravi lunged. The historian reacted by anchoring a wrist and twisting to keep the idol from passing. Shouts filled the well's rim.
"Ravi! Anaya!"
"Sidhu!" In the scuffle, the idol slipped and struck stone. The metal fractured with a distinct, abrupt noise. Oil slicked the stones. A piece dove into the water and vanished. The shock was immediate. The crowd recoiled. Hands flew to faces. Mira swore and pushed forward. Ravi tried to retrieve a fragment and was shoved back by a villager whose features were set in angry lines. In the aftermath, the historian scrambled to recover fragments. He felt the slick on his palms as he lifted a small bronze flake and cradled it in a gloved hand. Someone held up a waterlogged clay shard, the one the historian had seen earlier, but now ragged and dark with well water. The shard bore a fresh sigil pressed into the clay. The serpent motif linked to concentric fertility marks. Anaya fell to her knees and pressed her forehead to her palms, sobbing once and then steadying herself. Mira shouted to record everything. "Write this down," she said. "Describe the break. Inventory the fragments. Photograph the well." The historian did it. He directed a field assistant to photograph the slick stone, to bag the bronze flake, to note which hand had tried to pull the idol back. At dawn, the village split. Some villagers muttered shame and walked away from the well. Others circled back to the rim with low-voiced anger. Sidhu argued with the town council in a voice that did not raise but that made decisions. The idol had been used, the rite had been performed, and that the breakage did not end obligation. Anaya, who had wanted to be a mother, now bore the weight of a public failure. She met the historian's eyes and did not flinch. "What now?" she asked. "Mira, we report to the office. We secure the fragments. The law will decide. Ravi, we collect what we can. We won't let them accuse Anaya herself." The historian watched these exchanges and felt two emotion shifts. His suspicion moved to active protection for the ritual fragments, then to clarity on a broader network. The camp's anger moved to a mixture of shame and defiance among the villagers. The historian returned late to his tent with the waterlogged shard wrapped in greaseproof paper. He unwrapped it and pressed his magnifier to the clay. The fresh sigil's lines were crisp, not merely worn. He saw a small anomaly, a dot placed slightly outside the central coil. That dot matched a small puncture on the broken bronze flake he debagged earlier. The puncture was not random. It suggested a repair or a private mark, a family token added to the surface long after casting. He set the shard beside his notebook and used the brass magnifier on a catalogue card. The card from the earlier vault entry showed a similar dot on a seal from a settlement 50 kilometers downstream. The historian's breath shortened into a measured exhale. He recognized a pattern that extended beyond this mound. He sealed the shard into a labeled bag and slid it into his coat pocket against his amulet. Outside, dogs barked in the village. Inside, the smell of tobacco and damp paper sat in the tent like an old smell. He wrote one line in his field notes: "Fresh, sigil. Downstream match." Network implied. He did not write the word conspiracy. He did not write the word cult. He wrote evidence and left the inference to be drawn through further fieldwork. He turned the tent flap closed and pulled it down, the cord at the bottom catching on the brass magnifier. He thumbed the magnifier free and slid the bagged shard into a side pocket. The last image was the shard's damp clay against his palm, the dot aligned with a tiny puncture on the bronze. The chapter ends with a concrete, audible beat. There is a gentle knock on the tent canvas just after he settles. He looks up, tenses, and reaches for his notebook. Footsteps pause outside. The knock comes again, 3 short taps. He draws back the flap a fraction and sees Ravi's shadowed shoulder in the lantern light. "There are more," Ravi says. The historian closes the flap and slips the shard deeper into his pocket. The decision to follow those signs tomorrow is not an inner vow. It is recorded in the knight's equipment list and in the packed lanterns by the door. The immediate conflict, who took the idol and why, has resolved into a new, concrete trail. A puncture, a matched seal downstream, and a village that will not let its need be erased. He pinches the bagged shard between leather and palm, and hears Ravi's voice again through the canvas. "We should go at first light." He nods and turns to his notes. The list growing longer and precise with every line. Ravi levered the final flagstone free, and a gust of warm sesame-scented air climbed the sealed stair into the evening. Suspicion tightened the occult historian's jaw. He paused, hand on the brass magnifier at his throat, and watched dust motes peel away in the torchlight. The excavation crew muttered. Someone cursed when a terracotta shard skittered into the gloom. The problem was immediate and clear. The team had opened something the village still treated as living ground, and those who owned the memory of that ground were gathering now to demand its burial or its theft. He had felt suspicion for days. That suspicion made him watch every face, count footsteps, and hold his tongue when others spoke. He stepped down first, lantern in one hand, his other hand trailing the rough brick as he descended. The light cleared a curved wall and showed a shallow relief. A coiled serpent carved low into the plaster, its jaw half closed, the scale pattern incised with a tool whose grooves still held grit. A cluster of broken oil lamps lay on the floor. Asher crouched at his side and tapped a bronze fragment with a bone tool, producing a thin ringing note. Ravi, the occult historian, keeping his voice measured, "Check the outer terrace again. Keep the cord clear." On it, Ravi answered and turned. He moved fast, boots slapping the packed earth. The village elders' delegation arrived as the last light fell. 50 figures in a ragged line. They came with poles and flat faces. The elder stepped forward, his fingers catching the edge of his shawl. "You dug here, the elder. You broke the stair." "Elder," Asher replied, standing, "we found structural collapse. We aim to document and stabilize. You found treasures for your journals, the elder. You do not find what belongs to us." The exchange hardened the three men into positions. The occult historian felt anger surface, sharp, controlled, at the elder's tone. He answered with evidence. "This chamber shows repeated offerings, not a single grave. See the wear on the stone. See the lamp deposits." He tapped his notebook with a finger. The elder's eyes narrowed. "You speak of where, the elder? You speak of lamps, you speak of reasons. But our dead speak louder." Ravi stepped between them and lowered his hands. "Elder, look at this," he said, and held up a small clay tablet. A stylized serpent motif peered from clay smudged with red residue. The elder's mouth tightened. A woman behind him made a sound that could have been a sob. The dispute shifted outward into the terrace. Shouts rose and fell. Men from the village called the act profane. Some demanded immediate reburial. Others wanted the pendant's metal for sale. The occult historian kept his calm voice, but let the suspicion wedge into his decisions. He did not trust the elder's assurances, nor the villagers' claims of antiquity. He had catalogued cult imagery across ruined sites. He had seen how a symbol could hold power when people believed it could. His job was to preserve not only object but consequence. Asher and he made a rapid choice. They secured the vault entrance with a length of linen and moved inside to examine the fragments the team had exposed. Their lamps painted the chamber in hard yellow cones. The vault smelled of burnt oil and damp earth. Bronze shivers lay in the sand. Asher lifted a crescent-shaped armlet and set it on a cloth. "Look here," Asher, voice low. She turned a clay tablet so the carved serpent faced the occult historian. The motif repeats. Each seal pairs the serpent with a geometric fertility pattern. This one uses notches to count offerings. He adjusted his spectacles and traced the notches with a fingertip. Suspicion shifted to hypothesis. He began to read the object as procedure. He murmured numbers under his breath and sketched the sequence in his notebook. He spoke aloud, because Asher needed to follow the chain of inference. If the notches mark seasonal rites, then the pendant. He stopped when Ravi hissed from the niche beside the altar. Ravi had found a narrow recess carved between two bricks. He shone his lamp and drew back a sealed clay stopper. Inside lay a small vial wrapped in a scrap of linen. When he uncorked it, a dark oily residue slid up the glass and left a black crescent along the rim. The thread around the stopper smelled faintly of sesame oil and smoked herbs. Asher put a hand on her mouth. "This is fresh," she said. The room tightened. Suspicion hardened into alarm. The occult historian's chest rate quickened. He crouched and examined the vial's surface. The bone fragment next to it glinted weakly, an articulated joint, small, cleanly cut. He lifted it with the brass magnifier. The bone bore a thin abrasion line, not weathered by age. "This is not centuries old," he said. His voice was a narrow instrument. "Someone used this not long ago." Outside, raised voices cut into the chamber. A young hunter from the village, muscles tensed and face raw with a protective fury, had slipped past the cord and clambered toward the stepwell rim. He reached into the excavation and plucked a serpent pendant from a scattered heap. The pendant caught the lantern suddenly and flashed. "You thief!" a woman yelled. The hunter's jaw set. He had taken the pendant as though retrieving a talisman, as though the metal itself could stop the trimmer in his village. He broke the cord when he leaped. "Put it down!" Ravi shouted. The hunter answered by bolting toward the terrace. Men from the village lunged. The occult historian moved to intercept, but a scuffle began. Hands grabbed flailing arms. A lamp fell and cracked. Someone hissed and pushed Asher back.
Ravi!
The occult historian barked.
Stop him, Ravi!
Ravi ran after the hunter and collided with a vine of chai sellers and stray goats. There was a compact, rapid series of exchanges. Shoves, curses, the elder calling order in a voice that trembled with authority. The occult historian placed himself between the hunter and the rest of the team and raised his hands in the way of a mediator. "Listen," he said, "we will not take the pendant. We will record it. We will leave such things if the village wants them buried. Leave." The hunter spat. "You say leave and your men will sell it in the city. You cannot assume that." Asher, voice sharp. "Asher, it we document on site. Any removal is catalogue. Document." The elder's tone shifted to contempt. "Document. They document and leave us with empty altars." The argument moved fast, 3 to 6 short lines, each exchange compact. Accusations, denials, bargaining. The occult historian relied on measured syntax, naming each man as he spoke, using quiet firmness to interrupt fraying tempers. "Ravi, bring the tablet here." "Asher, secure that vial." He made choices to diffuse rather than inflame. Anger ebbed in his voice and suspicion slid to caution. Ravi returned, clutching the tablet. Asher held the vial in a folded cloth. The hunter, breathing quickly, fingered the broken pendant shard in his palm. His jaw trembled. The elder's shoulders lost heat, grief and resolve folded into his posture. At that moment, the pendant's broken edge snagged on a lamp smear, and a dark residue spattered onto the serpent relief itself. The residue left a wet crescent across the carved scale where the stone was most deeply incised. The stone seemed to register the contact in a way that the occult historian could not name. He felt his pulse skip. Others in the chamber whispered and fell quiet. Asher moved to rub the stain with her thumb, then hesitated. The hunter dropped to his knees and placed his hand on the relief, palm flat, fingers splayed. The vision arrived at the edge of sight. It came as a film of motion projected on the curved wall. A man in a saffron shawl stepping to an altar, beads clacking, hands moving in tight coiling gestures. The reconstructed serpent priest's silhouette resolved with slow precision, braided hair, ochre lines across his brow, a bronze armlet catching low firelight. He lifted a clay bowl and poured a dark oil onto an altar. The vault filled with the sound of his measured chant as if the stone had kept its own recording. Panic hit in clean physical ways. The hunter's breathing increased. His hands grabbed the relief as though clinging to a living thing. Asha's mouth opened, then closed, and she swallowed so hard her Adam's apple moved. The occult historian's stomach tightened. Suspicion inverted into fear. He could not mistake the details. The priest in the vision wore the same coiling cord motif as the armlet they had found. The hand gestures matched the incisions on the seals. Did you see that? Ravi, short and blunt. Yes, the occult historian. He steadied himself on an elbow against the wall. Asha, did you put something on that pendant? Did you stage? No. Asha. Her voice was small. I did not touch the pendant until the hunter moved it. The hunter pressed his face to the stone and laughed once, high and thin. It calls, he said. It calls for the water. The elder's face folded. He spat. It calls for what we refuse to give. Words rushed against each other. Claims that this was a trick. Accusations that the team had provoked the village spirits. Negotiations for calm. The occult historian stepped back and took a breath that tasted of smoke. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The fear shifted again, this time into a clinical focus. The sighting altered his priorities. Whether or not the vision was hallucination, the villagers believed it to be real, and belief here had immediate social force. Record everything, he ordered. Ravi, Asha, write down the exact placement and the residue. Note the time. Ravi fumbled open his field notebook and began to speak the details aloud as Asha wrote. Their voices were short, clipped. The occult historian narrated measurements and referenced the tablet from Chapter 1. The coiling relief they had previously uncovered in the vault, where Ravi had pried the slab earlier this campaign. He cited the bronze idol from the collapsed arch reported the night the idol had been almost taken. He used those past events as anchors to restrain panic. You remember the slab, he said. Ravi forced that brick in Vault 1. This pattern repeats. It ties the terrace to the stepwell. Yes, Ravi whispered. We thought the idol had been buried long ago. Now we must assume the ritual continued, Asha. Their conversation stalled when the hunter bolted. He snatched a shard of pendant and pushed past the elder, running toward the scrubbed path that led downriver. He vanished into blackness, and the team split in reaction. Some wanted to pursue, others argued for containment. The elder slumped to a nearby stone and wept quietly, the sound a wet irregular breaking. Men began to form into two groups. Those who wanted to chase the hunter and bring the pendant back to the vault, and those who wanted to seal the stepwell and call the matter closed. The occult historian moved his hands in small motions, counting options on his fingers. His suspicion had become procedural. He suspected ongoing rites. He suspected someone in the village. He suspected the hunter might lead others to replicate the act. Do not give chase, he said. Do not let this become a theft that leaves us no record. Asha closed the niche. Ravi, document the breakage pattern and the residue. Elder, will you allow us to reseal with your witness? The elder blinked slow. He looked at the hunter's direction, mouth set. I will watch, he said. But if you take it away, we will come after you. They argued in tight bursts. 3 to 5 lines each, voices small and plain. The occult historian kept repeating. Record, reseal, limit access. His decisions were concrete acts intended to contain social contagion. He did not appeal to metaphors. He appealed to the elder's tangible need for custody. Asha wrapped the vial in linen and tied it. She took 2 more samples from the stain on the relief with a clean bone awl and placed them into labeled bags. Ravi photographed the layout with a small portable plate camera. The elder watched every motion like a man tracking a debt. The hunter did not return. Night sharpened. The team moved slowly to rebury what they could without missing data. The occult historian hesitated a moment over the coiled relief, then reached into his coat and drew out the small amulet shaped like an Indus, a seal that he wore inside his high collar. He did not place it on the stone. He only set it on the notebook's clipped page, as if to mark the observation. He thought of the reconstructed serpent priest's gesture in the vision, the slow coiling of fingers, and of the bone's fresh cut. He thought of power exerted through ritual repetition. They resealed the niche with new packing and tamped the entrance with sand. The elders' men helped. They formed a thin line and lowered the final slab into place. The occult historian stood with his palm on the cool flagstone and counted the breaths of the men around him. Suspicion moved to resolve. He decided to keep the full record hidden until they could analyze the residue without exposing the village to rumors and trade. He could foresee the ritual's utility as a control mechanism, cords of obligation bound to a fertility promise renewed by oil and bone. In the praadawn, the team left the terrace in a tense procession. Ravi walked beside the occult historian, voice low. "We almost lost a man tonight," he said. "We almost lost our context," the occult historian replied. His tone was flat. He kept his salt and pepper hair neat despite the night's dust. "We will file copies with the district and hide originals in my journal." Asha placed her hand on the notebook and then pulled back, uncertain. "What if they find the record?" she asked. "Then we will deny removal," the occult historian. "We will state we sealed the niche with their witness." He had learned to speak decisions as statements of work. He planned contingencies rather than grand statements. That choice moved fear toward pragmatic determination. They walked away along the river track. The elder remained at the rim, a silhouette against the pale horizon, shoulders folded. Men in the village spoke in low clusters. The hunter's absence became a fixed fact to worry over rather than a dramatic act to pursue in the dark. The occult historian held his notebook under his coat and checked the brass magnifier's S-chain with a thumb. Before they left, the occult historian slid a thin sheet of lead under the slab and pressed a quick seal of beeswax into the mortar, marking it with a tiny loop only he would notice. He wrote one line in his ledger: "Vile residue, organic, probable recent animal bone oil with plant smoke action, reseal, limited disclosure." He closed the book and tucked it into the worn leather pocket of his coat. At dawn, as cranes shaded the sky, he replaced the final flagstone, tamped sand over the seam, and slid the worn leather notebook into his coat before the sun rose. The decision to record and rebury resolved the chapter's immediate fracture. The site was contained, the relics documented, and the village allowed a claim of custody. But the broken pendant S-shard now rested in one hunter's palm somewhere beyond the floodplain, and the image of the reconstructed serpent priest's hands coiling over oil persisted in his memory as a precise ritual move that could be replicated. That knowledge changed what he planned next. He tightened the brass chain of the magnifier and walked toward the transport cart, counting steps and names. The chapter closed on a physical action. He closed the ledger and locked the cart. The metal click a definite, concrete sound. Ravi pried the last flagstone. Warm oil-scented air pushed up the stairs and brushed the occult historian's face. Suspicion tightened the historian's jaw when the bronze coil caught the torchlight. He had catalogued seals and shards for 2 decades, and he did not expect a functioning altar tucked so deep. The central question rose loud and concrete within seconds. Remove the idol for study or leave it buried to prevent a living rite. He moved closer, fingers on the brass magnifier at his throat, and measured the weight of that choice. The immediate scene gave context by action rather than explanation. The excavation crew crowded the rim. Mira crouched and wiped sand on her trousers. Ravi barked orders. The occult historian scanned the coil, the braided cord looped around its base, and the clay tablets peeking from a sealed niche. He had seen similar seals in the low wall relief from their first find. Now the same serpentine iconography sat whole and heavy before him. The problem was clear. The site was not merely archaeological debris, but a preserved configuration that had been used, perhaps centuries ago, to direct ritual behavior. "Ravi, stop," Mira, voice tight. "We should record and rebury." "Record first," Ravi replied. "Then we take it to the university." The occult historian stepped between them. He spoke with measured words. "We cannot assume inertness. Catalogue everything first. No sudden removal." That line, catalogue everything first revealed the historian's suspicion and shaped his next act. He ordered torches set and instructed the crew to edge away from the altar while he tested the cord's tension with the tip of a wooden probe. The cord resisted, fibers dark with oil. A braided loop suggested repeated handling. When he brushed his palm along the serpent's belly, his amulet, hidden beneath his coat, warmed against his sternum, and he felt the skin at his wrist quicken. He paused, fingers tensing. The first emotion shift had happened. Suspicion, unease. He did not name it aloud. Instead, he tightened his grip on the magnifier chain and called for photographs. Ravi knelt and clicked a camera. "Get the niche?" Mira, detail shots of the braid. Mira leaned in, lips compressed. "Why would someone bind an idol like this?" The occult historian did not answer with theory. He touched a tablet edge and read the impressed sigils under the lamplight. He recognized a pattern he had only seen twice before. A sequence of short marks that paired with the serpent motif to indicate containment and conduit, not mere decoration. His mouth went thin. His next move turned speculation into confrontation. He suggested they cut the cord and extract the tablet for immediate analysis. That proposal opened a second emotional shift. Unease alarm among the crew. "Cut it, Ravi." He looked at the villagers gathered beyond the excavation rope, at the older men who had watched since dawn. "You want us to cut what their families still touch?" The village murmured. A woman out by the rim pressed her palm to her mouth and turned away. The occult historian felt the air as a collection of movements. A child stepping back, a goat bleating, a villager's hand resting on a hip. He refused to flatten the situation into theory. He named the dilemma aloud. Preservation of knowledge versus risk of enacting something that remained live. That explicit dilemma forced action from others. Ravi barked another set of orders, and 2 young crew members pried at the braided cord with bone picks. When the cord broke, several lamps guttered and a fine vibration ran through the stone steps. One laborer swayed and grabbed the rail. Mira shouted, "Stop! Stop!" The occult historian stepped forward and held up a palm. He removed a small clay tablet from the niche and brushed it clean with his sleeve. The tablet's impressed sigils matched the coil's marks in a way that made the historian's scalp prickle. The artifacts formed an operational set. He did not say ritual. These were bound to a sequence. A village elder pushed through the rope and planted himself on the rim. He held no weapon, but his posture carried claim. "You break our sight," the elder said. "You take, you bring back misfortune." Ravi answered short. "We document and return." "This is science. You call it science," the elder said. "We call it custody." Names repeated across the argument so listeners could track speakers. Ravi, Mira, the elder, the occult historian. The dispute produced a rapid exchange. Ravi, "We need samples." Mira, "We need to respect their customs." Elder, "Your samples break our ties." Occult historian, "If the set functions, public safety matters." Ravi, "Public safety." Elder, "Our children sleep near this well." The back and forth lasted 6 lines before an external event interrupted. A lamp flared high and then dimmed. That flare coincided with the exposure of a deeper cavity beneath the altar. 2 crewmen had levered the serpent, and a hidden niche sheared open like a trapdoor, revealing more tablets and a braided cord that threaded through a circular bronze ring at the idol's base. The discovery pushed the chapter's stakes higher. The occult historian leaned in and felt the cord's heat radiate into his palm, though the rope felt cool to everyone else. He swallowed, teeth clicking, and reached for the amulet inside his coat. Another emotion shift occurred. Alarm, urgency. He signaled the crew to back, then asked Ravi and Mira to stay forward. Mira touched the newly exposed tablets and read syllables out loud in quick, practical phrases. Sequence 1, offering. Sequence 2, binding. She read in a businesslike tone as if passing a ledger. "This looks like directions, not simply prayer." Ravi looked at the villagers. "Why bury instructions?" The elder answered with a small, flat laugh. "To keep them safe and to keep them working for the ones who know." That reply reframed the earlier discovery. A twist landed. The tablets were not mere offerings. They were operational instructions that required living participation. The occult historian's suspicion hardened into a concrete conclusion. The set had been designed to be re-engaged. His decision now mattered beyond scholarship. As night deepened, small oil lamps along the rim flared in a rhythm that matched the marks on the tablet. Several laborers rubbed their temples and reported sudden dizziness. One man collapsed and then jerked to his feet with a blank, intense stare. The occult historian felt his amulet grow hot against his chest again. He stepped forward and touched the bronze serpent. A current moved through his gloved fingers and his knees tightened. He realized the artifacts were charged in a way he had never measured in a museum catalogue. The crew's behavior changed from academic curiosity to protective urgency. "Get him up," Mira ordered. "We move him away." They dragged the laborer back. The village elder began to make slow hand gestures, specific, repeated motions that matched the looped pattern on the braided cord. Others joined him. Their hands moved with practiced economy. The occult historian watched the gestures and the pattern on the tablet. The motions synchronized. The discovery now altered moral authority on the site. The villagers acted with the confidence of custodians. The historian had expected legal or academic friction. Instead, he met living practice. A woman from the village, young and limber, moved forward and placed her palm on the serpent's tail. Her eyes rolled white and her shoulders convulsed. The reconstructed serpent priest, visualized in the historian's mind from earlier reconstructions, seemed to find form in the woman's sway. The line between representation and agency narrowed. The historian stepped in, thinking to break the ritual mechanically, but the villager's convulsions seemed guided by a set of instructions embedded in the tablets. The second major twist arrived. The ritual's volant did not require a hereditary bloodline. It required synchronized action tied to the tablet sequence. That realization changed how the occult historian considered control. Anyone could enact the rite, given the sequence and communal coordination. Arguments resumed around the rim. Ravi demanded they lift the idol free. Mira pleaded for preservation in situ. The village elder repeated a phrase in his language, and then translated with brittle calm. "You will not carry our thing away." Ravi lunged forward. "We must take it," he said. "Ravi," Mira started. "Not without consent," the elder said. The occult historian stepped between Ravi and the idol as if his body could buy time. He had a plan that required a choice. Break the cord and risk immediate activation, or remove a tablet and risk long-term misuse. He chose the tablet because it would give them the chance to study sequence without displacing the entire set. He slipped a hand inside his coat, palmed the tablet, and slid it into a hidden pocket. He did not announce the theft. His hands were steady, but his pulse beat at his throat. The historian's action completed another emotion shift. Urgency calculated resolve. The immediate consequence arrived within breaths. The villagers' synchronized gestures stumbled. The convulsing woman shuddered and fell into a coughing silence. The elder shouted and rushed toward the historian. Two young crew members grabbed him at the rim and dragged him back. Ravi pushed through and shoved the elder away. Voices rose to a fierce pitch. That confrontation, physical, legal, and moral, was the chapter's mid-climax. "Give it back!" The elder yelled. "You came with tools, with cameras," Ravi snapped. "We archive, we return." "You will break what you do not understand," the elder said. The occult historian held up his hands. He spoke in short sentences. "Put the cord back. Stop the motion." The elder staggered. He clasped his own chest and whispered a name the historian recognized from the low wall relief, an ancestral title linked to the cult's hierarchy. That name changed everything. The elder was not only a custodian, he was a living link to the ritual's lineage. An unexpected reveal shifted the historian's understanding of earlier events. The man who had watched them since dawn was not a passive observer, but a guardian who had orchestrated measured re-engagement when the site was touched. The villagers gathered close now, their shadows long and compact against the stepwall rim. The reconstructed serpent priest motif, the braided cord, the coil, the tablets, assembled into an enacted sequence as the elder and his followers moved through the motions. The air held a tangible cadence, hands tapping, sandals scuffing, breath timed. The occult historian recognized the exact gestures the tablet demanded and felt the logic of containment unravel. When all parts were present, the ritual completed itself. At midnight the ritual peaked. The villagers' gestures synchronized with the tablet's marks, and the bronze serpent began to vibrate faintly. The convulsing woman rose and began to speak in short bursts, single words repeated, then a phrase that stitched together the sequence the tablet displayed. A chosen participant in the group bent and placed his forehead against the serpent's coil. The reconstructed serpent priest's authority seemed to pass through this man. His chest heaved, and for a moment his eyes were blank and then fierce. The occult pattern translated into action. The occult historian saw the consequence of extraction or interruption in its purest form. A living rite made possible by material configuration. He had to act. He lunged and seized the braided cord near the altar base. He snapped it with the heel of his hand. Ceramic dust flew. Lamps guttered. The man who had been the chosen participant convulsed and slumped. A raw sound, a mixture of pain and release, issued from the assembled villagers. Ravi and the crew scrambled to drag the stricken man away. Mira knelt and cradled his head. The elder sank to his knees and touched the broken cord. He did not curse or praise. He counted the losses in small, precise words and then breathed a directive into the night. Bury it deeper. Hide the tablets. That command shifted the chapter toward resolution. The occult historian, after a long, measured pause, reached into his coat and produced a small journal. He wrote one sentence on the flyleaf: object removed. Risk present. Partial containment enacted. Then he palmed another tablet from a different pocket and hid it beneath a pile of cloth among the recorded artifacts. He had kept one tablet and returned others to the niche in hopes the set could no longer complete. He made specific, concrete choices rather than moral generalities. By dawn the site was cordoned with rough rope. The villagers insisted on a watch. Some artifacts were recorded and resealed. The occult historian argued and then yielded to a compromise. Photographic records, measured samples, and the reburying of key pieces under local supervision. Mira insisted on legal documentation. Ravi insisted on transportation for the larger fragments. The elder refused any removal of human, binding elements. They reached an uneasy arrangement through repeated short exchanges. Record everything, Mira the elder. You keep, we watch, the elder replied. Ravi signed the inventory list with a hand that shook despite his orders. The occult historian walked the stepwell rim, feeling the tablet in his inner coat pocket like a small, hot stone. He could not pretend that he had a clear solution. He had intervened physically and morally. He had prevented immediate activation by breaking the cord and by hiding a tablet. But he had also taken an element that might clarify or enable reassembly later. His decision had consequences. He measured those consequences against the latest event when a villager had convulsed and the chosen participant had slumped. He had made a pragmatic choice. Remove the key to reduce immediate danger while retaining enough for study and potential re-sealing. The crew packed tools. Mira bundled photographs. Ravi helped load broken terracotta into crates. The villagers salted the disturbed earth with a ceremony of small offerings, handfuls of rice placed at the rim and tiny lamps set along the outer path. The elder spoke a phrase of closure and then an instruction. No one would carry the idol beyond the village boundary that day. The occult historian bowed his head and handed the elder the pocket notebook that recorded measurements and sample codes. He did not say the tablet's secret, that he had kept one. Before they left, the historian stood over the altar once more. He turned the hidden tablet between his fingers. Under the pressed marks, a new line of symbols had been revealed by night humidity. He read them aloud because action required words now. Sequence closes on chosen host, not on blood. The line altered his earlier assumption that lineage alone sustained the rite. The ritual was procedural. Knowledge, gestures, and material configuration together created agency. That revelation explained why the villagers had active protocols and why the elder had authority. It also reframed the historian's responsibility. Written knowledge could release a mechanism when paired with communal enactment. They left the stepwell under a washed, outdawn sky. The occult historian walked with Mira and Ravi, the tablet heavy in his inner coat. He did not speak until they reached the makeshift camp. Then he slid the tablet from his pocket and tapped its edge on his notebook. "We document the sequence," he said. "We lock the instructions where only controlled hands can reach them." Mira looked at him. "And if controlled hands become corrupted, then we limit distribution," he replied. "We bury enough context to break operation, and we publish only what keeps people safe." Ravi signed another measurement sheet. "We have records," he said. "We can argue later." They argued later in small, sharp exchanges about ethics, custody, and scholarship. The occult historian kept his face neutral. He had always preferred evidence to rhetoric. Now he felt the cost of that preference in the set of small decisions he had made at midnight. He had intervened in the ritual's completion, and in doing so he had become an actor inside the cult's living logic. By noon the site was partially reburied. Lamps were snuffed. The village resumed work in the fields, but the elder remained at the rim, watching. The occult historian walked to the stepwell edge once more and placed one hand on the packed earth. He felt a residual thrum under the soil where the cord had been broken. He set the hidden tablet on the stones, covered it with a scrap of cloth, and then slid a small flagstone over it. He tamped the edges with both hands until his palms stung. That physical action closed the chapter's immediate conflict. He had removed a node of the ritual and then resealed part of it. Before dawn turned fully to day, the elder approached the historian and spoke in the elder's quiet voice. "You kept a thing," he said. "I did," the historian replied. "Why?" "Because someone must know how to stop it," the historian said. "Because knowledge can help contain, not only expose." The elder considered that, and then nodded once. "Then hide it well," he said. The final concrete beat came in the elder's hands. He reached into his own shirt and produced a thin braided cord, frayed at one end, and wrapped it once around the flagstone where the historian had tamped. It was a small sealing practice, not show. The elder tied it with a knot the historian had seen in the reliefs, then placed a pinch of earth on top. That simple, visible action concluded the immediate dispute. Some items stayed buried, others were catalogued, and a tablet left the site under guarded secrecy. They left the stepwell behind them with compromised answers and a clear list of responsibilities. The occult historian had intervened physically and ethically. He had broken a cord, hidden a tablet, and negotiated a guarded return. He had also learned a hard, factual truth. The rite's power came from procedure, not ancestry alone, and a living community could re-engage agency with recorded instructions. That fact would shape future policy and the historian's own notes. Before they packed their tents, the occult historian folded his notebook and wrote a final entry in steady script. Cord severed. Tablet hidden. Community custodianship acknowledged. Further study pending secure oversight. He slid the notebook back into his coat with the surviving tablet pressed against the binding. Then he handed the field sheet to Ravi and watched it change hands to the eldest cousin for safekeeping. The chapter ended not with a speech or declaration but with a concrete situational beat. The elder placed a small votive beside the sealed flagstone. Mira lit a lamp and handed it to the elder. Ravi clamped the crate lid shut. The occult historian tightened the strap on his satchel, feeling the tablet's edge under his ribs, and turned to walk away. The elder called his name once, not as accusation but as a ledger entry. The occult historian paused, nodded, and then led the team down the packed path away from the stepwell. leaving the altar buried beneath a measured patch of earth and watchful hands. The decision stood, documented, debated, and enacted. The occult mechanism had been interrupted, but its material traces remained. The historian carried one tablet out of the stepwell and into the controlled setting he hoped would prevent misuse. The final image that closed the chapter was not a poetic vow but a precise action. The occult historian placing the hidden tablet into a locked chest beneath the university's archives and handing the key to a council that had sworn to guard it. That locked chest provided a practical closure to the scene and to the immediate arc of custody and consequence.